Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're plunging into something that feels a bit counterintuitive, maybe even, yeah, a little uncomfortable at first. We're
Mm,
tackling empathy, that quality we usually praise, cornerstone of morality, kindness, all that.
right. But the source material we're looking at today, well, it makes a pretty bold case against it.
Exactly. It's quite a claim.
It really is. We're drawing mainly from a book called Against Empathy, The Case for Rational Compassion. And it forces you to stop and think, like, why would anyone be against feeling for others? Seems odd.
Totally odd. The author even calls empathy something like kittens, seemingly universally good, something you just can't argue against.
Huh, yeah, kittens. Hard to argue with kittens.
So our mission here is to really unpack why the source argues against this kitten. We'll explore the potential downsides it points out and see what the sources suggest might be a better path forward for making decisions for, well, improving things.
We want to help you, the listener, cut through that sort of automatic assumption that more empathy is always better.
Yeah, get a more nuanced picture, all based strictly on the arguments in the sources we have.
Okay, so first things first. We need to define our terms, right? Because empathy can mean different things to different people. What exactly is the source arguing against?
Good point. Crucial distinction. The source primarily targets emotional empathy.
Okay.
That's feeling what another person is feeling, mirroring their emotions. It's like Adam Smith's old idea of sympathy. You imagine yourself in their shoes and you kind of feel a version of their joy or their sadness.
So if they're sad, you actually feel sad too because of them.
That's the core idea.
Got it. So it's not just recognizing the emotion, but actually taking it on yourself. And the source is careful then to separate this from related ideas.
Very careful. They talk about compassion or caring. That's feeling concern for someone, wanting them to be okay, wanting their suffering to end.
But you don't necessarily have to feel their suffering yourself to feel compassion.
Exactly. Like you want your friend to feel better after a bad day, but you don't have to feel miserable yourself to want that for them.
Right. Makes sense. What else?
There's also cognitive empathy. This one, the source actually sees as valuable, quite different from the emotional kind.
Okay.
This is more the intellectual understanding, knowing what someone else thinks or feels, perspective taking.
Ah, so you can understand that someone is scared or angry, maybe predict what they'll do, without actually feeling scared or angry alongside them.
Precisely, like a doctor understanding why a patient is anxious, but staying calm themselves to treat them effectively. The source likes that kind.
So understanding is good, feeling it yourself, maybe not so much, as a guide at least.
That's the argument, yeah. It's the feeling part that's critiqued as a moral compass.
Okay, and one more.
Yeah, emotional contagion, which is like, catching emotions, laughing because everyone else is, or feeling tense if a crowd gets panicky.
Sort of automatic almost.
Yeah, though the source notes empathy can also involve imagining feelings from a situation, not just this direct catching. But the main target remains that emotional mirroring.
Okay, definition's clear. Emotional mirroring is in the crosshairs. But wow, still feels weird. We're always told empathy is key, right? To being good, to connecting. How does the source even start to argue against it? Where's the flaw?
Well, the core argument, as the source presents it, is that emotional empathy is just a poor moral guide
Pooh how.
because it's inherently flawed, biased, just not a reliable compass for making good decisions, especially ones that affect lots of people.
Flawed and biased. In what ways?
Well, one huge issue is its bias and parochialism. The source uses this metaphor of empathy as a spotlight.
A spotlight.
Yeah, it shines really brightly on specific individuals, usually people who are close to us or similar to us or, whose suffering is right there in front of us. Really vivid.
Ah, so it doesn't spread evenly. It focuses narrowly.
Exactly. It doesn't scale well to big numbers or distant problems.
Is this the one over the many thing you mentioned?
That's it. And the source gives some really stark examples. It talks about the Sandy Hook massacre, horrific, intense emotional reaction everywhere.
Absolutely. Unimaginable.
But then it contrasts that with the number of children murdered in Chicago that same year. Statistically, a higher number, but far less visible suffering, fewer headlines, less collective outpouring.
Wow.
The empathy spotlight, the source argues, shone intensely on Sandy Hook, but it kind of missed the more diffuse, less narratively neat tragedy happening elsewhere.
Yeah, that really makes you think about where your own emotions go.
It does, and it's not even a new idea. Adam Smith way back, had this thought experiment. How would someone in Europe react if they heard an earthquake just killed everyone in China?
Okay.
Smith figured, they'd express sorrow, maybe think about life's fragility for a moment, but
Yeah.
then probably get back to their own day without being deeply distressed. The scale, the distance, it dilutes the feeling.
Right. Too abstract, too far away.
And the source suggests this isn't just random. It might even be like built in. From a Darwinian view, favoring your own family, your own tribe, over strangers has survival value.
So we're maybe not naturally wired for universal empathy.
Not for equal empathy for everyone, the source argues, which leads right into the second big criticism, innumeracy.
Innumeracy, like bad at math.
Sort of. Empathy struggles with numbers, with statistics.
Yeah.
It fixates on the one tragic story, the identifiable victim. It finds it hard to grasp or be moved by suffering on a massive scale.
Which makes it tough to make decisions based on helping the most people possible.
Exactly. It sounds noble, focusing on saving the one, but the source argues it can be disastrous for policy or global problems.
How so?
Well, the argument goes that intense empathy for a few victims can fuel outrage that leads to really bad decisions, like maybe going to war, causing far more suffering overall.
Ah, I see. The emotional reaction overrides the calculation consequences.
Right. The source brings up that chilling quote, often linked to Stalin. One death is a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic.
Oof. Yeah. And contrasts it with Mother Teresa saying something like, if I look at the mass, I will never act. If I look at the one, I will.
So she used that focus on the one to motivate her work, which is understandable.
Yes, but the source's point is that, more broadly, if empathy only lets you see the one, you might be blind to where your help could actually do much more good for many others.
Right. Like with charity. Does the source talk about that?
It does. It mentions studies showing people give way more money to help one specific identified victim, with a name and a picture, than they give to potentially more effective charities that could help loads more anonymous people with the same cash.
Like the Habitat for Humanity study example in the material. Giving more for one family you see versus maybe building more houses overall.
Exactly. It feels better to help the face you can see, even if, logically, the money might do more statistical good elsewhere.
It's that tension between feeling good about helping and actually doing the most good. Precisely. And it's not just about big societal things. The source also argues empathy can be harmful in personal life and professional life, too. It can get in the way of making tough but necessary choices.
Okay, like when? Give me an example where feeling what someone else feels is actually a bad thing.
Parenting. That's a classic example used.
Ah, okay.
An overly empathic parent might really struggle to discipline their kid, right? Or enforce rules, or make them do stuff that makes them unhappy in the short term. Homework, veggies, shots.
Because they feel the child's distress too strongly.
Yeah. They mirror that unhappiness. The source argues good parenting needs love, intelligence, compassion, sure, but too much emotional empathy might make you prioritize the kid's immediate feelings over what's actually best for them long term.
I can see that. It's hard to be firm if you're feeling their tantrum right along with them.
Exactly. And professionally, think about, say, a surgeon.
Right.
The source quotes a surgeon, Christine Montross, basically saying she couldn't do her job if she felt her patient's physical pain.
Makes sense. You'd be incapacitated. Totally. And similarly, a patient quoted, Leslie Jameson, said she preferred her doctor to be calm and competent, not mirroring her own anxiety. You want the doctor to understand your fear, sure, that cognitive empathy.
Right, you want them to get it.
But you don't necessarily want them feeling it so much it messes with their focus or skill. You want competence, not shared panic.
That makes a lot of sense. You need clear judgment, especially when stakes are high.
Right. And then there's the final point, which is maybe the most controversial one. The source argues empathy isn't always good. It can actually motivate bad actions.
Okay, that feels really counterintuitive. How can feeling someone's pain lead to doing bad things?
Well, Adam Smith comes up again. He noted that seeing someone wronged makes us feel empathy with their anger, their resentment.
Okay.
So empathy for the victim can fuel a really strong desire to punish the person who harmed them.
Like wanting revenge almost.
Exactly. And the source argues this can be manipulated. You whip up empathy for your side's victims to justify aggression against the other side. Think about rhetoric before wars or conflicts.
Like the examples mentioned for Iraq or Syria, airstrikes focusing intensely on the suffering caused by the enemy.
Precisely. Empathy for us fuels anger and action against them. It narrows your moral focus.
So it can actually promote us versus them thinking and justify harming them because you feel so strongly for the U.S.
That's the argument. And it challenges the common idea that cruelty just comes from a lack of empathy.
Right, that bad people just don't feel.
Yeah. The source suggests many awful acts are driven by strong beliefs, perceived morality, ideology, loyalty, not just an absence of feeling. There's that chilling example of the father in Dubai.
Oh, the one who stopped lifeguards rescuing his daughter.
Yes, because he believed it was better she drowns than be touched by strange men. Horrifying, but rooted in his twisted moral code, not necessarily a complete lack of any feeling for her.
Wow, that's disturbing.
It is. And the source brings in Steven Pinker's idea about the myth of pure evil, that perpetrators often see themselves as doing the right thing, however warped it seems to us.
Okay, so if emotional empathy is potentially biased, innumerate, can hinder good choices, and even fuel bad ones, what should we rely on, according to the source? What are the alternatives for making the world better?
Well, the book argues for several other capacities that it sees as superior guides. A big one is reason and rationality.
Okay, using your head,
Yeah.
basically.
Analyzing consequences, costs versus benefits, trying to maximize good outcomes.
Yeah.
Like consequentialism, Peter Singer's ideas fit here.
Is that like the Zell Kravinsky example in the source, the
Ah.
guy who donated a kidney to a stranger?
Exactly, and apparently considered donating another one. He explicitly said his decision wasn't based on feeling an emotional connection, but on a kind of mathematical calculation of odds and potential good.
So cold, hard logic leading to incredible altruism.
That's the example used, yeah. Arguably more effective altruism than empathy alone might lead to. Another alternative is diffuse compassion and caring.
Which we distinguished earlier, the concern, not the mirroring.
Right. That general wish for others to be well, to not suffer. The source argues this is what makes good people better. Empathy might highlight suffering, make it noticeable, but it's compassion and reason that should guide the actual action.
So caring matters, just not necessarily feeling their specific feeling.
That's the distinction drawn, yes. The source also stresses intelligence and self-control.
How do they fit in?
Well, they're crucial for recognizing your biases, right?
Yeah.
For managing those impulsive emotional reactions and making deliberate thought-out choices instead of just going with your gut feeling.
Like being able to step back from that vivid story of one victim and say, okay, but what did the statistics say? Where can I make the biggest difference? And then overriding the emotional pull.
Exactly that. Intelligence helps you see the bigger picture. Weigh consequences. Self-control helps you act on that understanding, even if your emotions are pulling you somewhere else.
Okay. What else?
Another key idea is impartiality and depersonalization.
Sounds a bit cold.
Maybe, but think about fair systems. The source argues that good policies, fair procedures like blind auditions for orchestras or anonymous grading or blind review for job applications, they're specifically designed to remove personal feelings and biases, not to somehow magically increase empathy for everyone equally.
Ah, right. You don't judge your own kid in a competition because you can't be impartial. You remove the personal connection.
Precisely. So instead of trying the impossible task of feeling equal empathy for every single person affected by a decision, you aim for fairness by removing the distorting lens of personal feeling altogether.
Okay, that makes sense in that context.
Yeah, and the source contrasts this with views like Simon Baron-Cohen's idea mentioned in the text, that the Nazis lacked empathy. The book argues, again, that such horrors often come from ideologies that dehumanize or warped moral justifications, not just a simple lack of feeling.
It's more complicated than just no empathy equals evil.
Right, and it uses that historical example. Thomas Carlyle arguing for slavery based on sentiment and tradition, while economists opposed it using rational analysis, suggests reason can be on the side of moral progress when feeling isn't.
That's a powerful counterexample to the feeling is always good idea.
Definitely challenges it. Lastly, the source briefly touches on principled morality acting from deep religious or philosophical beliefs, like Mencius saving the child from the well out of an innate sense of right and wrong.
Or actions driven by faith.
Yes. And also custom and social norms, just acknowledging that often we do things because that's what people around us do.
Okay, so quite a few alternatives proposed there. It's a strong case against relying only on empathy. But surely the source admits empathy isn't always bad. It can't be advocating we all become unfeeling robots, right?
Oh, absolutely not. The source is very clear. Emotional empathy isn't inherently evil or always harmful. It acknowledges it's a source of pleasure, enjoying art, fiction, feeling connected watching sports.
Yeah, you meet it for that.
And it's valuable, maybe essential, in close relationships. You want your partner or kids to feel special, you share their joy because you genuinely care about them specifically.
Right, you wouldn't want rational calculation in your closest bonds.
Exactly. And the source concedes empathy can sometimes spark good actions. It just argues it's an unreliable trigger, biased, and often less effective than cool-headed compassion and reason.
So the critique isn't about getting rid of empathy entirely, but about its role, specifically its reliability as a moral guide for broader decisions, for making the world better.
That's it precisely. Don't rely on it as your main compass when trying to do the most good for the most people.
What about the politics? Does the source get into whether this is like a left or right-wing idea?
It does touch on that. It mentions the perception that liberalism is often linked with empathy, brings up people like George Lakoff. And notes some studies find liberals score higher on empathy scales on average.
Okay.
It uses Mitt Romney's binder full of women or wanting to fire service providers as examples that, from one viewpoint, seemed, well, lacking in obvious empathy.
But the source doesn't pick a side.
No, it explicitly argues the link isn't that simple or absolute.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides use empathy appeals when it helps their case.
Right.
It mentions Barack Obama appealing to empathy for victims' families regarding gun control, but also Dick Cheney using an empathic story about a 9/11 victim calling his daughters to justify harsh interrogation techniques.
So empathy can be weaponized by anyone, basically. That's the implication. The source presents its critique of relying on empathy as nonpartisan, something useful for anyone trying to make better, more effective decisions, regardless of their politics.
That's crucial. Analyze the appeal itself, not just react because it tugs at your heartstrings or aligns with your group. Okay, one more area. What about the pushback that humans just aren't that rational anyway? Psychology, neuroscience often seem to emphasize our irrational side.
Yeah, the source tackles that head on. It acknowledges neuroscience shows the mind is the brain, but argues that doesn't erase reason or responsibility. The whole "my brain made me do it" idea, unless maybe there's a tumor or something extreme, is seen as a misunderstanding. Your conscious thinking is brain activity.
So brain activity doesn't automatically mean no conscious control or choice.
Exactly. The issue isn't that the brain is involved, but whether the action is disconnected from your deliberation. And it also engages with all those social psychology findings, cognitive biases, heuristics, mental shortcuts that mess us up.
Right, like experiments showing we're swayed by smells or clipboards or how a question is framed.
Like the famous ones asking if more words end in ing versus having in as the second to last letter. People get it wrong because ing is easier to recall.
Compelling stuff shows we're not always logical. True. But the source makes a couple of key counterpoints. First, maybe many of these lab findings, while real, don't matter as much in the real world compared to the big factors people weigh for major life decisions.
Like buying a house or choosing a career, you probably think harder than about ing words.
Hopefully. And second, crucially, humans can recognize these biases when we reflect. We can override them. You realize, thinking about it, that the framing of the question about words doesn't change the actual frequency. We have this capacity for slower, deliberate correction.
We're not just puppets of our biases. Reason is a real tool we possess.
Yes. And the source argues that while irrationality might be really obvious and low stakes, identity-driven stuff like national politics.
Or maybe you just agree with your party regardless, like the studies mention where people endorse policies just based on the party label.
Exactly, Jeffrey Cohen studies.
Yeah.
But the argument goes, people are much more rational when the stakes are high and personal local issues affecting their neighborhood, major financial decisions. The capacity for reason is there. It's about using it, especially when biases like empathy might pull us off course.
Okay. Wow, this has been genuinely thought-provoking, really challenging a core assumption. So if we try to boil it all down based on everything we've dug into from the source material, what's the main takeaway for you, for the listener?
I think the central message from this material is emotional empathy, that feeling what others feel kind. It feels good, it has its place in close relationships, sure, but relying on it is your main moral compass, especially for decisions affecting lots of people or complex situations. It's problematic.
Because it's biased, bad with numbers, can lead you astray.
Exactly. The sources argue that things like reason, that diffuse compassion or caring, intelligence, striving for impartiality, these are argued to be more reliable, more effective tools if your goal is actually making the world a better place.
And just to be super clear, This isn't an argument for being cold or uncaring or robotic.
Not at all. The source is explicitly pro-kindness, pro-alleviating suffering. It's arguing for a different way to get there, a potentially more effective way, guided by careful thought and broad concern, not just the flickering spotlight of mirrored emotion.
Understanding this definitely gives you a new lens, doesn't it? For looking at news stories, political speeches, charity appeals, even your own reactions.
Mhm.
Asking yourself, is this pulling at my heartstrings about one specific case? Or is it asking me to think about the bigger picture, the overall consequences, the most effective action?
Absolutely. It encourages that pause, that critical question. Is this action or policy,
hmm
however emotionally appealing it feels right now, actually the best way to achieve the good outcome it promises?
So maybe the goal shouldn't be just more empathy, dialing up the feeling, but maybe, as the source seems to suggest, it's about making sure our emotions, empathy included, serve as useful inputs, useful signals.
But not the sole decision maker.
Right, not the master guide. They should serve our rational, compassionate goals, not dictate them.
A final thought, perhaps, for you to mull over as you go about your day. Based on what we've explored from these sources, which path seems better for navigating our complex world and trying to improve it, relying mainly on the intense, potentially narrow feeling of mirroring others, or relying more on reason combined with a broad, impartial compassion?
Definitely something worth considering long after this deep dive is over.